Hey everyone, and welcome to Bible 365. I am your host, Kathy Carter. Bible 365 means we're reading through the Bible in 365 days using the one-year chronological Bible reading plan from the site oneyearbibleonline.com. So you would go to that site, download the reading plan. It is a free reading plan. You can do that, or you can buy their Bible, and then you would join in with me. So today is day 156. It is not January. It's June 4th. And we are doing the Song of Solomon, or the Song of Songs, or Solomon's Song of Songs. It depends how it's written in your book. And I had warned you a little bit yesterday so this is sort of my preface. I warned you a little bit yesterday that this was not one of my favorite books. And I was really hoping, I was praying that today I would have some revelation, that I would be really excited when I read it. And unfortunately, that's not true. But I don't want you to not listen, because I'm not going to be amazingly inspiring. What I want to just kind of note is that it's okay that if every reading you have, it doesn't blow you away. It doesn't fill you with all of these new, fresh understandings, right? And so I'm just going to sit in it, because I don't know why it doesn't relate. Although I have to tell you that it's possible that I kind of already come in with a little bit of a bad attitude. There's a part of me that goes, why is this in here? It's not about God. It doesn't mention God. And so what's the point and purpose about it being in there? And so I think I already come in with a little bit of a bad attitude. So when I read it, and then when I read it, it's in a poetical style that I don't really enjoy. I don't really enjoy poetry. Chronologically, it makes absolutely no sense to me. Like, are they married? Aren't they married? Is it before their marriage? Is it after their marriage? Right? So all of these things. So I just want to note that if there's a reading that comes up to you and you're kind of feeling this way, right? Like, you're just like, it's not resonating with me. It doesn't mean you give it up. It doesn't mean you never read it again. Maybe it means that you want to actually sit in it for a time and really study and get some depth to the reading. So then it might light something up in you, right? So it just kind of depends on where you are with that. And again, for me, I'm just going to sit in it. I'm going to be comfortable with, I took some things out of it. There are some things I appreciate about it. I know that there are depths in there that I haven't been able to relate to. And they might come with time. And so I have to just be comfortable with that. All right, so we're going to just get started in it. And so it was 8 chapters. And they were short chapters, so they weren't wildly, wasn't a ton of information. It wasn't unreadable. But I want to note who it is. So we have that Solomon wrote this. And I'm going to say that that's probably true. One of the things that we did learn from when we were in First Kings, right before we kind of went into the Proverbs, was that Solomon, who was the wisest man in the world, at least at that time, if not through all eternity, which I'm probably going to venture a guess that it's through all eternity. He was the wisest man that existed. And in his wisdom, he wrote down over 3,000 proverbs and over 1,000 songs. This is just one of them that we're privy to. And so who knows where the others are, but this one was important enough that somebody wanted to, probably many somebodies wanted to chronicle it and put it into the reading in the Jewish temple, right? So they would read this over and over and over again. And it could very well just be because of the importance of Solomon, right? So it could be about that. We're showing Solomon's wisdom in a marriage. Although, if I hit the other side of that coin, Solomon was married to hundreds and hundreds of people, which we find out in the next chapter. So again, I'm not clear, but it also could be that there is this love relationship that Solomon has between his bride, and now we're starting to come into this area in the Bible where God talks about the love relationship between him and his bride, which is the people of Israel, and eventually it's the Church of Jesus Christ. And so this could be imagery for that, right? So again, I'm going to say there's depths to it that I haven't dwelled in yet, but let's get right into it. After that, we didn't get right into it, but okay. So for many of you, I'm not sure every single one, but depending on your Bible, the Bible has headings in it they're marked as he and she and friends, right? So he would be King Solomon, right? So this would be King Solomon's perspective, his point of view. She would be his wife. And then the friends would be maybe friends, maybe just extra people. They're kind of like others, like anyone else that's in the group. This was done at a slightly later time because I'm going to guess that when he was first writing it, he understood who the author or who the voices were, right? But someone later came in and filled these things out. And there are some discrepancies if this is exactly the proper he and she, right? Like if the headings are in the exact proper place. We're just going to go with what they are, and we're going to go from there. So in the very beginning, she is the one talking. I'm going to start out right away with what she says because this gives us some insight to who she's talking to. She says, "Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine. Pleasing is the fragrance of your perfumes. Your name is like perfume poured out." She's already starting with this beautiful poetic love language, right? Explaining sort of like her infatuation with him. And then it says, "No wonder the young women love you." Somebody who is highly loved and esteemed by a lot of people. And then she says, "Take me away with you. Let us hurry. Let the king bring me into his chambers." So now right away, we know that the she who she's discussing is a king. So we're headed in that direction. We also know when we move on to, let's see, because we've got his name in chapter 3 verse 7, she says, "Look, it's Solomon's carriage, escorted by 60 warriors, the noblest of Israel." So now we know that the king that she's pining after is King Solomon, right? So now we kind of know the players. We know that she doesn't ever get named, but we're going to find out some things about her. She's a Shulamite, so we're going to find that about her. And we know that he is the king, right? So it's King Solomon. So we got the players in here. So those are the two people, and they are madly in love. And I'm going to point out a couple of verses, but the overall gist is these two people are madly in love. She doesn't really come from the best of backgrounds. She's a hard worker, because she talks about how dark her skin is. So she's lovely, right? She looks really pretty, but her skin is really dark because her brothers make her go out and work their fields. So she's probably not, she certainly wouldn't be another kingdom that would be trying to make a pact with Solomon. And so to have their daughters marry him, right? So we're going to say that she's not that. Because if you guys remember, he is the first person I believe that he married was Pharaoh's daughter, right? So an Egyptian woman, Pharaoh's daughter. And so this isn't her. And she's probably not somebody that's highly esteemed in the kingdom. Probably the case. However, he looks at her and he's longing for her, right? So like he says all these amazing things about her to the point where like the friends are kind of like, who is she? And then at one point they're like, oh, she's amazing, right? So he talks her up in such a wonderful way that even the people around her now seem to put her in high regard, right? They place her in a place higher than she was. But there are times where he talks about, so it looks to me like they're not married yet, right? But she's like, oh, look at him. I see him. He looks amazing. I want him to marry me. And then she explains herself. She's dark, yet lovely. She's a daughter of Jerusalem, right? But again, she's dark. We're making a whole big deal about the way that she looks. So there's assumption there that that's not the norm. Or again, that's not what is maybe deemed to be beautiful at that time, because she keeps kind of talking about it over and over again, and then why she is. And then she says, "Tell me whom I love, where you graze your flock and where you rest your sheep at midday," because she kind of wants to go over and she wants to see him. And then he starts talking about all these wonderful things about her. So one of the verses that I wanted to note is verse 9. He says, "I liken you, my darling, to a mare among Pharaoh's chariot horses." So that's a compliment. And so I just wanted to note that that's a compliment. So he is complimenting her. He thinks she's beautiful. A mare in those words, like she would be really prized among the horses. This mare, this female horse would be really prized because they're beautiful, those Egyptian horses. This was one of the things that, again, in a few chapters prior, we discussed was one of the things that he was known for. He would buy these amazing horses out of Egypt that everybody would covet, and then he would sell them. So that was one of his sort of businesses in which he did. And so he's complimenting her, and he compliments her over and over and over again. But then this one verse, in verse 16, it says, "How handsome you are, my beloved, how charming, and our bed is verdant." And then he says, "The beams of our house are cedars, our rafters are firs." It sounds like it's talking in the present tense, as if they are married. And he's talking about the house being really great, right? It's made out of cedar and fir. That's great. She's talking about the bed being verdant, right? It's like living and vibrant, like grass, right? Like it's really good. And so it sounds like that's present tense, but I feel like it just keeps going in and out of all of these tenses, which again is one of those things that confuses me, because are they talking about him wooing her, or are they talking about their relationship after they're married, right? Again, this is one of those areas where I get a little bit lost. It's not fully revealed to me, all the things that are going on. But one of the things that I want to note that she says 3 times. So she says it in chapter 2. And then she says it again, I think, in chapter 3, and then she says it again near the end. And her words are, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. I believe that the point of this, and through some of the other things that she explains, because the way in which she's explaining these things, it's like there's this excitement of being together and finding me with you. And then there's another time where they say it and it's like, it's winter, but now it's spring. And so he's coming for her, right? So he didn't really come for her in the winter, but he's coming for her in spring. And so it seems like there is a time and a season for everything. And so don't rush into it. Don't rush things. So he's going to come to her. They take some time to sort of build up their love together, right? To compliment each other and to say how amazing they are, and then to fall in love, and then to get married and do all these things. But there's a time for that. And so don't rush out and do anything too hasty. Hold back, wait until the time is right, which is really important, because if they're speaking to, I feel like Solomon a lot of times I feel in some ways he's speaking to younger people. He's trying to build up and grow his kingdom, right? So he's trying to make these people closer to God. Some of his guidelines are to give them the decrees and all of those other things, so that they will walk with the Lord. And this is one of the ways that I believe that he's doing that through marriage, right? Through a covenant between a man and a wife. When we read the book of Proverbs, and Solomon was talking about wisdom, he was talking about the adulterous woman versus the wise woman, right? The woman of wisdom. And so he was comparing those two things, and really how treacherous the adulterous woman is. And so there's something to be said about the purity and sanctity of marriage. So waiting until, obviously, to be really literal, waiting until you're married to form that union, right? But waiting even to form a union until there's these seasons that they have with each other. And then they form a union. So they're building and they're growing together, and then they form a union. Again, this is what it sounds like to me. And it's the poetry is really out there a little bit for me in this one. So this is kind of what I'm gathering, only in the fact that it's been repeated 3 times. And so there's import in that, right? It's an important thing. The other thing I wanted to note is in chapter 2, verse 4, she says, "Let him lead me to the banquet hall, and let his banner," sorry, this is the way that it's written. It really messes with me. "And let his banner over me be love." Let him lead me to the banquet hall, and let his banner over me be love. I don't think he's literally leading her into a banquet hall, and there's this big banner that says love over top of it. When we learned about back in like Deuteronomy and Leviticus and Numbers, right, and all those areas, there were literal banners for every tribe. So every tribe knew who they were following, right? Who was leading them, who was following them. The banner would be from him, so she would be following him, right? And it would be a banner of love. So if we're kind of following that, it's leading them into a place of love. It's a picturesque way of saying that, and really of like really loving, like him being there for her, him being the good and honorable man, leading her in a way, right? So And I think that's important in a marriage. All right, let's see. So, yeah, it says on the day of his wedding. And then we have this whole, in chapter 4, this whole thing about how he just talks so beautifully about her. And then he says, come with me from Lebanon, my bride. So again, he's calling her his bride. Does that mean she's supposed to be his bride in time? Maybe, right? Seems likely, maybe. And I know in one of the things in historically in Israel is that they were bound to each other for I think a year before they actually got married. So maybe something similar to like what we do as engagement. It was sort of like that, but she was his bride, but they didn't consummate their wedding until after a year. So that might be what he's talking about. But he says all these wonderful things, right? He says, verse 11, your lips drop sweetness as the honeycomb, my bride. Milk and honey are under your tongue. The fragrance of your garments is like the fragrance of Lebanon, which is, again, a good thing. It's nice. Your plants are like an orchard of pomegranates with choice fruits, with henna and nard. These are special treats. These are like sweet fruits. I mean, at this point, I think we all know what pomegranates are, but you know, it wasn't like something that was easy to get and easy to find and easy to have. All comes with work. So then it looks like down here in chapter 5, verse 2, like starting in this section, kind of looks like they're coming together, but then this whole weird thing happens. She's waiting for him and she feels like he knocks at the door and she thinks she hears him. So she goes to the door and then she runs out to try and find him, but then watchmen find her. My guess is she's not supposed to be out and she's not supposed to be alone. Verse 7, it says, the watchmen found me as they made their rounds in the city. They beat me, they bruised me, they took away my cloak, those watchmen of the walls. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, if you find my beloved, what will you tell him? Tell him I'm faint with love. So she's chasing after him, which may or may not seem like a good thing. See, these are one of the things that stumped me. Why is she getting beaten? It doesn't seem, I mean, is there the fact that she's supposed to be waiting and she's being impetuous and she's out running after him and she shouldn't be? She should be waiting? Maybe. Then we follow up again with more of her talk of what he looks like. She kind of points out each of his amazing features and how wonderful and amazing he is. And then the friends are like, hey, where is he? Where did he go? And so she says where he's gone. He's gone down to his garden. And then here we go. So he says, you are as beautiful as Tirzah, my darling, as lovely as Jerusalem. And then he follows up in verse 8 and he says, 60 queens there may be, and 80 concubines, and virgins beyond number. But my dove, my perfect one, is unique. Does he already have all these wives? I think so. I think he's got all this already. So we find out he's got a whole bunch of women. And so he's saying there's a whole bunch of women already, but you are amazing. I take offense to that. It's so personal. I totally take offense. He's a king. And so there's something to be said that we kind of know that he's going to have a lot of wives. David had hundreds of wives, many, many children with those wives. He also had tons of concubines. So there's an understanding that as territory starts to trade with each other, they're going to give him wives. So he is making her seem special. And he is noting that she's special. It just hurts my heart a little bit when I read about it. All right. So then he's complimenting her again and he calls her over and he's complimenting her. And then it says she's not ready to be with him yet. Right. So, and then she says, because this is verse 8:1, she says, so it doesn't seem like they're completely with each other yet because they can't be together. Verse 8:1, if only you were to me like a brother who was nursed at my mother's breasts. Then if I found you outside, I would kiss you. So maybe they're betrothed, but they're not able to be with each other yet. She said, I would lead you and bring you to my mother's house, she who has taught me. And then once again in verse 4, then it says, daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. So here we go. They're teasing at it a little bit, and then they're like, but we can't do that, right? And then they're complimenting each other and saying how amazing they look. They're kind of like fulfilling some of these desires in a way, and then they're like, but we can't, we're not ready to be with each other yet. All right, and then she follows and she says, verse 12, chapter 8, my own vineyard is mine to give. The 1,000 shekels are for you, Solomon, and 200 are for those who tend its fruit. So it seems like she is now finally giving herself to him. And he says, "You who dwell in the gardens with friends in attendance, let me hear your voice." And she finishes, "Come away, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or like a young stag on the spice-laden mountains." So it sounds like they end up together in the end, which is great. It's a beautiful poem. That's kind of all I got for you. Uh, if you guys really get a sense of what this is, I'd love your comments, really, because I don't like to, and as I've mentioned before, I don't necessarily like to go into commentaries. I don't necessarily want to be told, but I'd love to hear your thoughts where you kind of land in this when you've read it as well, and just to see what resonates with you, because this poetry might be something that sparks a lot of excitement and interest in you. And so I would just love to hear about that. So, but we will be back tomorrow, and tomorrow we're going back into history, which I'm really excited about because that's kind of my favorite area in scripture. This is one of my favorite areas in the Bible. So if this was a blessing to you at all, I really hope, even though it wasn't my strongest reading, I hope that you were able to get something out of it, even if it was just through your reading and through my lack of understanding. So I want you to like it. I want you to share this, and I want you to subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell for notifications. In the meantime, keep reading, and I will see you guys tomorrow.